what if when we are building this journey, instead of looking at who I am, we start saying, I don't really care about who you are, and I don't really care about you knowing your demographic. And I start caring only about what you are trying to achieve, And I'm going back to my window shopper and fast buyer example. What if the next email I receive is not an email that is targeting for my demographic, but it's an email that is targeting for what I was trying to achieve on the website?
I'm thrilled to have our guest, Lucie Buisson, who's the Chief Product Officer at Contentsquare today on our podcast. Lucie, welcome to the show, and maybe you can tell our listeners off the bat how to pronounce your last name properly.
Thank you so much for having me. So as you can hear, I'm French, and it's a very French name. In French, we say Buisson, and it means bush in English.
Got it. That is great. Lucie and I caught up about a month ago, and we were sort of talking about the vision behind Contentsquare. And Contentsquare is grown to pretty massive scale. Well over 1,000. What's the employee count now?
Yeah, it's around 2,000 if you count both Contentsquare and Hotjar, which are the two brands we have with the organization. And I would say that for me, it's been quite a ride, because when I joined, it was only 10 people in a very small apartment in France, So it's been amazing to see the company grow that much in 10 years, and to go from 2 customers to more than to millions of customers we have now.
Yeah, no, and really, when I think Contentsquare, what I think you guys do just exceptionally well is really just thinking about the customer experience relative to what are they currently doing right now? Are they having a great experience, a bad experience, an amazing experience? And how do you really get back to first principles and make sure that that's measured as accurately as possible? And Lucie, when you and I were speaking a few weeks ago, we sort of talked about this notion of the data point. And this is a thesis I have, because ultimately data is only as powerful as how it's used.
Yes.
But at the same time, garbage in, garbage out. If you're not measuring the right data, it doesn't really matter how you're using it. So really the big question today that we're going to be diving into is something that I like to call the lifecycle of a data point. It feels incredibly tactical, but when we get into it, it is pretty exciting. I promise all our listeners, it will be more exciting than maybe initially framed. But really thinking through and talking through the journey and the process, rather, of thinking through how data is collected. And what might feel incredibly tactical is actually incredibly strategic when you get into some of the specifics, especially when you look at some of the work and the platform, the capabilities, the product that Contentsquare has built. And then we'll sort of carry that through the customer experience and bring that to some of the problems that we solve here at Simon. I'm just trying to put 2 and 2 together, and hopefully for our listeners of the show today, just really go home thinking critically about the life cycle of not just your customers, but the life cycle of your data. Are you collecting the right data? Is it accessible? Are you using it the right way? And are you actually affecting it to drive great outcomes? So before I talk anymore, Lucie, maybe you can just talk a bit about Contentsquare, the vision of for the business, how the product works, and then we can get into some specifics after that.
Yeah. So I would start by saying that our mission at Contentsquare is to enable organization to create more human experiences. And what we mean by more human experiences is that online, doesn't matter if you interact through a website, an app, or whatever channel you choose to interact with brand, you can get the same level of empathy and the same great experience as the one you would get in store, And the way we do that is by collecting trillions of data points, mainly on context and behavior, to understand the needs, the pain, and the desire of customer, but really to understand what they are trying to achieve. Because if I am a window shopper, or if I am a fast buyer, or if I'm a price comparator, I don't have the same need from a website, And this is something someone in a store or in the branches would understand very well. But today, websites or apps are failing to understand. You arrive with an intent and you always get the same experience. So our job is, from those very first interaction between a customer and a digital property, to be able to understand what is the intent and what they are trying to achieve, and to be able to understand what is engaging what is frustrating for those customers, to really try to eliminate as many frustration as possible and to try to focus on what is the most engaging and what is the most rewarding for customer in their online experience, if that makes sense.
I love the analogy to the digital shopkeeper. And we, at Simon internally, have sort of, similar analogies. Obviously we're focused on the activation side of the problem, but you think about if you're selling jewelry at a gift shop, you think about the conversations you have with your customers. You think about the interactions that you understand around how they're browsing through the store and walking through the aisle and picking things up and asking questions that might be leading or showing no signs of interest at all. And then if you look at a lot of the tactical data collection that happens in established platforms like Google Analytics, the data is so cut and dry. It's like entered the store, took out credit card, swiped the machine, credit card decline, and yes, these are data points that you need and they have their role in place, but there's such a far cry from actually understanding where the customer is.
Exactly. Yeah. I think what Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics or this kind of analytics is going to give you is the what, but they're not going to give you the how or the why, and basically 90% of things happen in between clicks, it's like exactly the event you are describing in the store, like 90% of the understanding lives within those big actions. So really, like, our job as Contentsquare is to collect every single interaction between the user and the interface to be able to understand the how and the why and to make sense of what's happening in between two clicks and really understand why someone is having a good experience and why someone is clicking, just not how much they are clicking, but why are they clicking?
Yep. No. And so now the question I'm sure everyone's asking, look, as a marketer, what am I going to do with 1 trillion data points? I have a small fraction of today. I still can't make sense of it. So maybe you can go through a few examples or use cases where Contentsquare does a lot of the heavy lifting or the magic, if you will, and makes sense of those volumes of data in order to affect some of the things that we're talking about here.
Of course. So first, I would start by saying that I think we all agree that solving the experience gap is an absolutely must-have, for our customer, because I think, like, when you see that today more and more services are only available online, and when I talk about services, it can be buying stuff, but it can also be, doing your taxes or asking for something you have, asking for anything you need on your life. More and more of those things have to happen online, so it's less and less a choice of going online. So it's super important to be able to improve your online experiences. And, we have small example we like to give, but when you are reducing rage clicking on your website, you could think that you are just like working on a very tactical metrics, but based on our data, if you decrease rage click by 30% in your website, it's up to 130,000 frustration you can avoid every day, which is 50 million fewer angry visitors per year, So I think I love this kind of data because it really gives you the perspective, As a marketer, your goal is to decrease bounce rates or to decrease rage click or to decrease the time spent in the checkout. And for you, it's just a tactical metric. But for your customer, it's their actual life, So I think it's really important to always remember that it's not robots using our website and our apps. It's actual human beings that are having emotion. But to go back to the use cases, at Contentsquare, we really think that experience is a journey, and there are different levels you need to achieve. The first level is to deliver an experience your customer expects, which is an experience that is fast, seamless, and friction-free. So basically, the troubleshooting use cases. So identifying the API error or GS errors that are preventing the most your customer to achieve their goal. It can be working on the speed of your experience. So really identifying what are the assets or what are the pages that are slowing down your experience. We see that loading time has a direct impact on bounce rate. And so loading time also has a direct impact on conversion rate, So really, this is, I would say, the first bucket. How do you create an experience that works, which is what your customer expects? And then you go to the second level of the pyramid, which is creating an experience your customer love and seek, meaning being able to create an experience that is going to help them achieve their goal efficiently and seamlessly, So it's not that just it works. It's that if I am a window shopper, I'm going to find inspiration. If I am a fast buyer, I'm going to be able to buy super fast and save time in my life, And the love aspect is really the inspiration aspect, It's a kind of experience that you love so much that you're not going to put this brand at competition, It's like this can happen with airlines, this can happen with shopping experiences, you have brand that you love so much that you're not going to benchmark them anymore. You're just going to go and buy from them. This you achieve by having a true experimentation practice, and being able to continuously improve your experience through data. And you also achieve that by having a personalization practice that is more based on the behavior of your customer and their needs than on demographic data. And finally, you have the last aspect of experience, I would say, which is an experience they deserve, and which is an experience that is trustworthy. So at Contentsquare, we put privacy at the center of everything we do. And also, we think that it's extremely important to help our customer bring experiences that are accessible, meaning accessible to people that have some kind of disability that makes it harder to browse online, and experiences that are sustainable, which mean experiences that are using as little bandwidth and resources as possible. So really, we help our customer create those experiences they expect, those experiences they love and seek, and those experiences that they deserve.
I love the mission, and I'll just bring it home to a couple specific examples that I certainly can relate to in my career, and I'm sure some of our listeners may as well. TechCrunch being sort of the tried and true way of introducing your brand to the world and getting lots of traffic. And it's always this immediate letdown where you see lots of traffic, high bounce rates, and no conversion rates. And people ask, is my product not working? Do people not want to buy my stuff? What's going on? And at the end of the day, if you look at the behavior that's happening, first, people aren't there, in a context to buy. And if you look at their interactions, they're not properly engaging with the content because their interest was there for the wrong reasons. And while bounce rate tells you the story around where they ended, it doesn't help you understand which of those people were actually engaged. And certainly if you got 1 million hits yesterday and your bounce rate was 95%, well, guess what? You have 50,000 hits of people who might actually be real customers, which could really make your year. And with that, you might have a small conversion rate of 3%. What about the other 97%? And how do you think about those? And how do you really understand the dynamics and the engagement that's happening at a much finer granularity than you can get today with traditional tools?
Yeah, definitely, I agree.
Great. So maybe we can talk a bit about, you have the data, and the analytics on themselves can be helpful. So the product wasn't built properly. There's an issue with search. People search for, my previous business was acquired by Etsy, and among other things, I worked on their search function. And there were lots of issues, with search quality, and it was, we had some degree of visibility around, searches that were just bad. But analytics on its own can be used to make the product better. It can be used to understand, do I have deficiencies in that I guess need to fix? But at the same time, analytics can also be used to identify an issue. Yeah. If someone encountered a website error, and furthermore, if that is a high value customer, you might want to think about issuing them an apology note. So maybe you can talk through some of the use cases that you see Contentsquare customers doing, that sort of identify, issues around a good or more likely bad experience, and what some of the remediations that you sort of see are, what that life cycle looks like, or what that loop looks like, rather.
Yeah, definitely. I think you have different level, maybe the easier to fix are bugs, like an experience, like website experience are full of bugs. I think what is really hard with bugs is that you can get overwhelmed by your backlog, and I think there is a kind of a misconception that like we should have bug-free websites. This is not true. We should have as much as possible bug-free experiences. But there are part of your website that are barely used, that are going to create bugs. And those bugs, you should not focus on solving them. So I think the most important thing, and what we are trying to teach to our customer, is to always quantify. And it's the same, when you get VOC, voice of customer feedback, to say, I hate your website, I will never come back, I think it's extremely important. And you're going to get what? If you have a very, very good practice, you're going to get 5% of your customers that are going to give you this kind of feedback. So how do you extrapolate? And how do you make sure you put the right level of investment and energy into the right bugs? The way you do that is really by looking at what is the business impact of those bugs, like how many people were experiencing it. But on top of that, what was the impact on the experience? How many of them left the website just after? How many of them didn't buy? How many of them never came back to your website? And this is what is really interesting, Now you are touching to the real customer impact and the real business impact. So I would say this is one first bucket of use cases our customers have with us, and they really learn to prioritize their backlog, and they really learn to solve the 20% of bug that is going to help the 80% of the experience. Then you have a second bucket of use cases, which is really like, how do you identify the content that is the most attractive and the most engaging, Because on a website, you have millions of pictures, banners, video, But what we very often see with our customers is that maybe 20, 30, 40% for the most performing brand are able to generate traction to all this content. And this has a cost, you need to produce this content. And it also has a cost in terms of performance of the website, because every time you have to load those content, you are decreasing the performance of your website. So being able to identify which content are really attractive to your customer are super important. And, the thing we see the most is those giant banners at the top of your homepage, that are taking all the space above the fold line, but nobody cares because there is no click, there is no hover, there is no attention on those parts. And when you scroll down the page, you see that the product carousel, for instance, that is completely hidden is getting much more click, So being able to identify those zones that are going to generate engagement is also a super important use case for our customer. And I would say that the last one is how you build your journey. And how do you make sure that when someone is entering your checkout, for instance, it's a flawless and a seamless experience, They don't have to do forth and back. They don't have to struggle to find information, and you make it like super, super easy for them. Same thing when you are like middle of the funnel, make sure that the flow from your search page to your product page, to go back to your search page or not, or to use a wish list is made in a way that is super easy and simple for customer to use, So we go back to this triptych kind of making sure your experience is performing bug-free, making sure your content is attractive, and making sure your journey easy to use,
Yeah, no, that's that makes a ton of sense. And for listeners of the podcast who are in CRM and marketing roles, I think of particular interest is the interplay with content. Because the natural engagement of content, of course, is through organic traffic and organic reading and interaction on the website. But at the same time, when you look at an own channel strategy across email or even a paid strategy for that matter, thinking about the lifecycle more broadly outside of that website or mobile experience, and thinking about, especially for businesses with purchase considerations that might be hours, days, weeks, or months, thinking about lifecycle and really asking, look, if you're going to, Lucie comes to my website and spends 1 hour browsing around and doesn't buy, and she's bought in the past, and I have one shot tomorrow morning to get her attention, what's that one piece of content I want to put in there? And how can I properly assimilate all those trillion data points that Lucie created yesterday to make sure that in the morning, I can keep my brand top of mind for her, if in fact I think it makes sense for her to come back and continue to browse and maybe even buy. And ultimately, these are tremendously complex problems. Yep. But if the data and the inference around the data isn't there, then you're starting from a point of real disadvantage.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think you said two things that are very important. I completely agree with you. The content is extremely important because this is how you're going to differentiate your brand a lot, and create trust with your customer and get their interest, But you also talked about the journey. And I think the journey is extremely important. I think the journey is what is making experience more and more complex to understand and to get it right now, because our customer, they're going to go on social and to interact with your brand, and then they're going to go on your website, and then they're going to go on your app, and then they're going to go in your store. And for them, it's always the same thing, they are just interacting with you. So they expect this to be consistent, and they expect you to be helpful at every step of the journey. And this is what is crazy for organization, because they were built in silos. They were built with team to get to work on social, team to work on offline, team to work on the app, team to work on the website. And now they need to find a way to make sense of all those data together. So I think this is where we have a big role to play, to really help brand make sense of this journey in a holistic way and help brand keep up on the engagement. And I think the big belief we have at Contentsquare, and can be a bit controversial sometimes, is what if when we are building this journey, instead of looking at who I am, we start saying, I don't really care about who you are, and I don't really care about you and knowing your demographic, and I start caring only about what you are trying to achieve, And I'm going back to my window shopper and fast buyer example. What if the next email I receive is not an email that is targeting for my demographic, but it's an email that is targeting for what I was trying to achieve on the website,
Yep.
And if I was doing window shopping, I get a very inspirational email. If I was having a fast buyer behavior, but I didn't go to the end, I'm getting a 1 hour free delivery because this is what I needed, So really starting thinking the content, not based on the demographic, but really based on what customer were trying to achieve and really based on their needs,
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think when I sort of look at, some of the different, actions that, we see in our platform at Simon, there's certainly a continuum. If customers show the intent,
Yes.
Then 100% you need to recognize the intent. If someone abandoned their cart, don't recommend that they go and look for other things. Drive home the purchase. And I think what Contentsquare brings as a platform, is an expansion around understanding of the different, behaviors that people are taking outside of the 2% that abandon their cart, up to characterizing some much larger fraction of traffic. At the same time, they'll look for customers who are high valued and are going to come back because they exhibit some regular cadence. At that point, you need to lean back on historics, and if they're not voluntarily moving forward and exhibiting those actions on their own. But I think what I'm hearing from you, Lucie, and I agree with 100%, is if customers are raising their hand, and getting back to the offline experience. If I'm entering a jewelry shop, to buy my wife something for Valentine's Day or a present, the shopkeeper is going to observe my actions. And I may never make it to the register, but that doesn't mean they won't have a conversation with me.
No, exactly. Completely agree with you. And, I think one of the reasons why it seems so complex to get digital experience right is because customers seem invisible, It seems that you cannot talk to them, you cannot see them, you cannot interact with them or listen to them, Yep. But actually, I think it's not completely true, because if through every interaction, every day on every channel, they are giving us continuous feedback, So what organization brand need now is a tool in order to make sense of those trillion of data points, And this was one of your first question, how do you make sense of trillion of data? And I think this is the other thing that is hard, you need, in order to create those more human experiences, you need to listen to all those signals. But how do you make sense to so much data? So I think this is really where the latest development around AI is extremely interesting, and is really showing us a way of how AI can assist human and can help us make faster decision, better decision, So I think I'm very optimistic about that, and how much we uplift in terms of value we're going to be able to bring to customer to around that.
Yeah, no, 100%. So we're sort of getting to the bottom of our time here, Lucie, and it's time for the bonus question. If you were to have this conversation, with anyone in the world, again, who would it be and why?
So actually, it's funny because it's it was not made on purpose, but I think what I just said before is a very good introduction to what I'm going to say. And maybe I'm not going to sound very original, but I would definitively have it with the team working at OpenAI, and maybe starting with Sam Altman, because I think that, this group and these companies are really first of all, what they have developed, for me, it's a real breakthrough, and I think the stats tell for themselves. It's the fastest adopted product since the beginning of internet. And the reason for that for me is very simple, is because it's so good, So you can add a lot of criticism on stuff that are not working yet, and etc. But still, it's a massive advancement. But this is not the reason why I would discuss it with them. The reason why I would discuss it with them is because they really put ethics at the center of the way they think about their product, and they really try to anticipate and own all the issue what their product is going to create, And I think it's fascinating to discuss with people that are so on top of the risk incorporated in what they are working on. So I think they are both very aware of the potential of what they are doing, both in the positive aspect and in the negative aspect, And I think this perspective is extremely interesting.
Yeah, no, and I think the point around ethics is becoming more and more critical every single day.
Yes.
And it's really coming from both sides. How do you collect 1 trillion data points, leverage state-of-the-art AI in a way that meets customer expectations? You have so much power that, at our fingertips. And on the other side, it's very clear the trends around customer expectations, both from the legislative level and an individual level, and a privacy level. I think we're at an inflection point where it's sort of triangulated across incredible capabilities, real concern and consternation from the consumer, and then beyond that, the macroeconomic, of course, with real pressure to actually get everything to work in a way that it didn't have that same pressure 5-6 quarters ago. So I think that's a great answer for both sides of the response. So sort of closing up, Lucie, thank you for coming onto our podcast and sharing your wisdom with us. Really, when I think about really the high level takeaways from the episode, it's really one of first and foremost understanding your data strategy.
Yes.
And understanding your data strategy starts with asking about your customers and about your business. All too often, folks look at the data in front of them, whether it be a spreadsheet or Google Analytics, or some static set of KPIs for your business, and they don't really put one and one together to ask, what's the actual customer experience? And from my perspective, an effective data strategy really needs to be business and customer centric, and it both needs to affect how you actually think about measuring those customer interactions, on what those emotions, sentiments, activities actually are. And then on the other side, and just importantly, how you use the data. Contentsquare obviously has a strategy around bugs, around content optimization, beyond, and from, and for listeners of our podcast and from a Simon data perspective, thinking about, activation of the data around core CRM, around lifecycle, around the experience outside of the web and mobile and fully digital experience and beyond. And ultimately that is the data strategy. I think all too often, data strategies get absorbed into a technology stack and a set of tools, and don't really think broadly about the broader business impact the way they should.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree with you. And I would just add one thing, is that I think all those data I think we should not mistake, all those data, they are a way. They are not the end point, and the end point, the outcome, the goal is really like to get to know our customer better so we can deliver a better experience. So I think it's also really important not to get lost in the process and to always remember that we are using those data to deliver those better experience to human being, and it's not the end.
It's very easy to optimize conversion rates and forget that pretty quickly.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So Lucie, for anyone who wants to learn more about Contentsquare, where should they go and where can they learn more about the product?
I think our website is a pretty good starting point, and then we have a lovely team at Contentsquare that would be more than happy, to answer all their questions. And we just released our benchmark report, our 2023 benchmark report, where we are trying to make sense of those trillions of data points on different industry, comparing activity rates, bounce rates, the impact on conversion. So I think it's also a very, very good starting point if you want to get know better how you do against the industry and know better what you can achieve with customer experience and with Contentsquare.
That's great. And thank you to everyone listening to this episode of the Data Unlocked podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Simon Data, please visit us on the web at simondata.com or email us at hello@simondata.com.